Senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, I've listened attentively to the debate the last 15 minutes about Zika, and it's been very entertaining to me, but it's also been interesting just to be able to hear the numbers being thrown around. There's a series of numbers being thrown around as if it's apples to apples comparison. So let me try to break down a few things with an apples to apples comparison about Zika and the funding. The president has asked for $1.9 billion for Zika. The Senate has now responded back to say, we'll do the $500 million. The president's already moved over from Ebola funding and add to it $1.1 billion, come up with about 1.6, almost 1.7 billion. So about 200 million short, which is being declared as grossly inadequate to be that 0.2 short from what the president had asked for. There's also being thrown around about the House proposal, saying the House proposal is grossly inadequate to be able to cover what's being discussed there, because it's a little over $600 million. Saying the president wants $1.9 billion, the House is offering $600 million. But what's not being stated is what the Senate has done and what the president's asked for is $1.9 billion over 2 years. The Senate has, or the House has said, a little over $600 million this year, added to the Ebola funding that was already there, meaning $1.1 billion this year, and then in our normal appropriations process to take it up again next year. It may be the same amount. And so it becomes very fascinating to me to say, well, they're cutting it into a half and it's insulting and it's all these things. And I just think it's the same numbers. They're just cutting the times to be able to break down to different moments. So all these number games are all very interesting, but they still don't drive at this one essential thing. We do need to deal with Zika, but we also need to deal with Zika in a fiscally responsible way. And the assumption that to deal with Zika means we have to throw the budget out, and there's no way we can find $1 billion in a $4 trillion budget to cover Zika is laughable. So what I propose is something very simple. Right now, Department of State, HHS, and USAID have $86 billion in unobligated balances right now. There is absolutely no reason $1 billion of that could not be moved in to deal with Zika right now. To do the exact same proposal that Senator Murray and Senator Blunt have proposed, but to actually do it with the unobligated balances. There's no reason that wouldn't occur. $500 million have already been moved over from Ebola funding. That would be $1.6 billion moving in to be able to fight Zika. The real issue with fighting Zika is three simple things. CDC actually tracking the movement so we can stay attentive to it. The second thing is dealing with mosquito population, that is aggressive spraying. And the third thing is working on a vaccine. Now, all three of those things we can do. And all three of those things have already begun. The research has already begun on the vaccine. The mosquito spraying has already begun, and working through the tracking of the movement of the disease has already started. The implication that somehow nothing can start until this body acts is not true. And the administration, starting in January and February, came in and said, this is urgent. We need to be able to move funds. We need to be able to have funds to do it. Ironically, in January and February, they came and held hearings on that. But in March of this year, 2 months ago, this same administration took $500 million out of the Economic Support Fund that Congress had allotted to them last December, which was earmarked especially for, get this, infectious diseases. So in March of this year, the administration took $500 million out of the infectious diseases account for international infectious diseases and moved that over and gave it to the UN for the Green Climate Fund. And now they come to us high and mighty and say, we need $1 billion. When the $500 million that we had already allotted that could be used right now, along with the $500 million from Ebola, equaling $1 billion, was already allotted by Congress, was already there, and could be in operation right now. And they chose to reallocate it to a different priority. So it really disturbs me to hear the administration saying, how come you're not doing anything about this, when we did. Last year, and then they spent that money on Green Climate Fund rather than spending it on Zika, what it was allotted for, infectious disease control. So here's my issue. We need to do both. We need to deal with Zika, and we need to do it in a fiscally responsible way, and we can. And I understand the term emergency means one simple thing here: spend more. Spend more and add more debt immediately because this is an emergency. I don't think Americans believe with a $4 trillion budget that we cannot cover $1 billion from previous accounts. In fact, if you want to be specific enough, the three accounts that the $1.1 billion that the Blunt-Murray amendment puts money into, they're putting $1.1 billion into a set of accounts. Just if we took those accounts alone, they're adding $1 billion to, already have $15 billion in unobligated balances in those right now. We can be efficient in what we do and still treat things seriously. And I think we should. I think it's fiscally responsible to not just say the Zika virus is moving quickly, so we need to add more debt to our children to respond to it. I think we can take care of our debt and take care of Zika. And for anyone that would say it's unheard of to be able to move funds for an emergency like this, may I remind you, in 2009, this same Obama administration, facing the H1N1 virus moving around the world, asked for permission to move unobligated balances out of some of these same accounts to deal with the H1N1 virus. Now we're just saying, if that's okay for the H1N1 virus, why is it suddenly not allowable now dealing with Zika? It's not. This is not about Zika anymore. This is about breaking the budget caps. We need to be responsible in our spending and responsible in how we deal with Zika. Both of them can be done. So with that, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the pending amendment be set aside so that I may offer my amendment number 3955 to the Blunt Amendment number 3900.
Is there objection?